Okay, so this is a problem statement I received. It's called validate IP address. And basically, I'm receiving a string called query IP, and I have to return another string, either this string, so IPv4, IPv6, or neither. If I want to return IPv4, then I have to make sure that this query IP string is in this format, where xi is greater or equal to 0 and less than or equal to 255, where xi cannot contain any leading zeros. And then a valid IPv6 address would be in this format right here, where the length of xi is greater or equal to 1 and less than or equal to 4. And then it can contain letters, but it has to be from A to F lowercase or uppercase A to F. And then these are some of the examples they give. Okay, so to start off, I'm going to first focus on returning this string right here, so the IPv4. And I know that the string has to satisfy these three conditions. So I know that I'm receiving this query IP string, and this string is going to contain periods, so I want to go ahead and first confirm that this string does contain periods, because again, my input could contain colons. But in this case, I want to check to see there are periods, and I'll be doing that with the find function. And once this is confirmed, then I'm going to go ahead and split this string by the periods, and then the split function will go ahead and store it into an array. Once that array is created, then I want to go ahead and check to see if this condition is not true. If it's not true, then I'll go ahead and return a string called neither, because now we know that it's not, since it doesn't contain colons, then this string can't be returned. So the only other option would be to return neither. And I'll be checking the length with an if statement. And once that's done, then if this case holds true, then I can go ahead and iterate through my array with the for loop, and then I'll be checking to see if this constraint does not hold with the current string that we have. Then again, I'll go ahead and immediately return a string neither, and I'll do a similar process here, only for this one I have to check to see if each index is greater than 1. I have to check to see if there are any leading zeros, only if the index has a length greater than 1. Okay, so now moving on to working on this statement right here. I'll go ahead and use these two lists, and these are just lists containing the valid letters that the string can contain. So again, I'll implement a similar process for this type of string, only instead of looking for the periods, then I'll go ahead and look for the colons. And again, if they're found, then I can go ahead and split the string by the colon and then store it into an array. Once it's stored into an array, I can go ahead and again check to see if the length of that array does not equal to 8, then I'll immediately return neither. If it is though, I can go ahead and check to see if this condition holds true, and again, I'll do that with an if statement. And then this one right here, the way I'll check to see if this constraint holds true, I'll do that with a second for loop. So I'll have to iterate through each one of the elements within each index. And I'll first check to see if the current element is in the alphabet, and I'll do that with isAlpha function. So if the isAlpha function returns true, then of course I know it's a letter, and then I can go ahead and check to see if that letter is found within either of these two lists. But if it's not, then again I'll return a string neither. So because of the two nested for loops that I'll be implementing, this the time complexity of this solution will be O of n squared. Okay, so I'm going to start implementing this case first. So again, I'm going to use the find function to see if the string contains a period. If it doesn't return a -1, then we know that we found our period. And then I'm going to create this variable right here named split array. And I'll go ahead and store the split array there. So once it's split, I want to go ahead and immediately check the length. As I said before, if it does not equal 4, then I'll return this neither string. And I'll just go ahead and copy that. Okay, so else it's going to go ahead and iterate through the array. And then it's going to check to see if each index follows this rule right here. And I'll be using the int function because our array is currently composed of strings. So if this is true, then I want to return neither. And then finally I'll be checking for this last condition here. So I know that if the length of I is greater than 1, then we know that we have to check if there are any leading zeros. So again, if int at index 0 is equal to 0, then again, this is not a valid IPv4 address, so I'll just return neither. Else, I'll return IPv4. Okay, so next is a similar process, and I'll be focusing on this right here, the returning the IPv6. So similar process, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this. Actually, this whole thing. So it's going to go ahead and search for a colon, and if it successfully finds colons, then it's going to go ahead and store it into a split array. And then if it doesn't equal 8, like this, then again it'll return neither. And then we want to go ahead and do the same thing, just iterate through the array. So this time I'll be checking to see if the length of the array is less than 1 or greater than 4. And if that's true, then I want to return neither because it goes against what this rule states right here. So I'll just say if the length of I is less than 1, or the length of I is greater than 4, then again return neither. And then if else, I'll go ahead and go into my second for loop that I stated earlier. And this is just again to iterate through each of the elements within each index. And I want to see if the current element that we're at is a letter. And this is just with this function right here. If this equals true, then I know that I want to check to see if the letter is not found in these two right here, the two lists that I created earlier. Then again, return neither. Else, it'll go ahead and return from here. It'll go ahead and return IPv6. And then, of course, if these two conditions don't hold, I want to return a neither string. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and trace it with this simple string right here, and this should return IPv4. So it's going to first go into this one right here. Since it does find a period, this is not equal to -1, it's going to go in here, and it's going to go ahead and split it by the period. And the outcome of that, my split array will hold an array. So it'll hold, okay, so it'll hold this array right here, the split array variable. And then from here, I want to check to see if it's not greater than 4. It is if it's equal to 4, it is equal to 4, the length is. So I'm just going to go into this for loop, and then we're going to be working, I is going to equal a string of 192. So it'll go into this if statement right here. So if int I is less than 0 or int I is greater than 255, which is not true, it'll go into this one. The length of this first index right here is greater than 0, so it'll check to see if this is true. It doesn't have any leading zeros, so we're good there. And then it'll go ahead and iterate to the next index, so 168. Similar thing going on here. Since this condition is not true and this one isn't either, it'll go ahead and iterate to the next index, which is 1. So right here, again, this isn't true. This isn't true, so we don't even have to go in here. And then it'll iterate to 0. Again, this isn't true, this isn't true. So we're finally done iterating through a whole array, so it'll just return the IPv4 string. Okay, so this piece of code does handle all these test cases right here. It can handle an empty string as well as these two, which will return a neither. I know that it is not efficient. It is O(n)², so it could be much more efficient in terms of time complexity, but I was having trouble thinking of other ways how to implement it that would have a faster time complexity. So if I can get some advice on that, that would be great. But yeah, this was the code that I was able to write.